We did it. I think we did it. Hello? Hello, everyone.
I think we did it.
I think I did it. Welcome to Tanzu Tuesday. It's Bob, Paul, and Tiffany with you on another fantastic day. There's one thing you might notice different about me. I'm working the behind the scenes stuff. I'm doing so. Paul normally does all this, but he's training me so that I can also do it. So hopefully, can somebody check the Twitch? Are they?
I see your face moving.
Do you hear me? Can you unmute it? Can you?
Yep, I just unmuted and muted again.
And you can hear me and everything?
I heard me, not you.
Well, I mean, that's fine. It's probably better for the best. Well, welcome everybody to our, like I said, latest Tanzu Tuesday. So happy to have you all with us. With me as always is Tiffany Jernigan, a door closing, and Paul Tchaikovsky. I don't know if you heard the door closing in the background.
I did.
And yeah, it's a little breezy outside. Paul, weather check for you. How hot?
It is pretty warm right now. I was about to say it's 69 degrees, but that's actually the temperature of my CPU, not the outside. It is 98 degrees.
98
outside.
71 here. Tiffany, what about you?
66.
60. Wow, that's a colder day there.
Oh, that's sweater weather.
And then let's bring in our speaker of the day, DaShaun Carter, aka Java Grunt. How are you, sir?
It feels weird not being on the Twitch chat and laughing out loud.
This is so great.
I mean, you could too at yourself.
Yeah, just lolling at yourself. And what's the weather like right now for you in the Kansas City?
Sticky. Sticky.
No.
You pull up the weather app and it just says sticky. And you're like,
Sticky.
yeah, I'm gonna stay inside now and forever.
85 and 63% humidity, at least in the one side of Kansas City. I don't know about the other side of Kansas.
Yeah, explain Kansas City to me. Is it like half of it's in Missouri and half of it's in Kansas? Is that right?
Yeah, it's two different cities. It's
Okay.
Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. But yeah, it's a trick.
Yeah, and which one are you in?
A lot of people don't connect those dots. Like, oh, like even the president, Kansas City, Kansas, but he was in Missouri. So it's just those little,
So the one
Gotcha.
that
And it
most,
happens.
the most United Statesians know is Kansas City, Missouri.
That's
And
the one that has the most people in
And that
the
has the
pro
baseball
sports.
team and the other football team and all that stuff.
But the
And-
the soccer team is on the Kansas side.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So how far away is that? Like if you were to drive from Kansas City, Missouri to Kansas City, Kansas, like how long would that take?
They're connected.
They're connected.
Some places they are split by
Okay.
the state line road.
But
Yeah.
It'd be
or
really
the
funny,
river.
1 foot in each side, and you can still say I'm in Kansas City.
Yeah.
but there's like a mayor for Kansas City, Kansas, and there's a mayor for Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, they're different states. They get
even
paid
though
by
they're
different
connected.
states.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Got it.
Yep.
So even though they're connected physically,
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
different as well. And police departments
That's
and
like
fire
every
departments
state.
and everything like that.
Yep.
Wow.
Bob, did you
And it
know
wasn't
why
that
they
big of a
have a
deal.
Kansas City, Kansas? Because Missouri loves company.
Oh,
Wow. That just happened.
Yeah.
Is,
I mean,
is Missouri the show me
You're
state?
welcome.
it is. It is.
All right.
Kansas is the sunflower state.
Oh,
I think. I'm pretty sure.
is that where all my sunflower seeds come from?
Maybe. I
just
don't
throw it
know
out
if it's
there.
like top
Kansas is
export.
the sunflower state.
Hey,
He's like fact checking everything.
that's awesome.
We are all on our computers, so this is an easy thing to do.
You're on your computer?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I meant to say I'm on my computer. So
Okay.
you should probably look into. I'm actually on two computers. I can look camera one, camera two, camera one, camera two. Although I've shut off this camera over here. It's crazy.
Therefore, it doesn't exist.
I do
Right.
have that. I would switch, but sometimes I switch the cameras and then Zoom shuts off.
It's
So
just, yeah, it's
I'll
just
wait.
like that. We'll be safer.
Yeah.
Well, we're so excited to have you. If people don't know, we're doing some 15 factors on Kubernetes, which is great. It's something that we at the kind of the cloud native cultural world of the Map BU really try and push these kind of ways of developing apps. Oh, got a coworker coming in.
I got a coworker.
Got a coworker.
And normally I have the light that says, "Hey, Daddy, do you want to come and say hi?" She gets shy. Oh, the lights.
Yeah.
I have a coworker. She's 2.
Yeah.
Aw.
She's potty training right now.
Oh, congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing that with our
Bob's
3-year-old.
potty training right now too.
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel weird potty training my son when I'm not quite potty trained myself. So it's like, don't throw.
It's
Don't
something that you guys
throw rocks
enjoy together,
in a-
do together.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what they say,
Um,
Bob?
actually, I
those
just-
who do. Those who don't can't. Get it? Do.
Yes, I got it. I totally laughed.
I got it.
But
Well, let's get through our what's coming up for everybody, so that we can get on to this 15-factor Kubernetes. It's exciting. So as always, everybody, Spring 1, it's coming in closer every day. It's like 3 weeks from now. Yeah. 3
yeah,
weeks.
it's crazy.
So go to spring1.io, register. All of our tracks are online, or at least most of them. And you can, just kind of peruse all the different things. The website's incredible. I was actually on the VMware podcast last week talking about it with Nate Shuda. And you can register.
Good.
There's sessions. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was telling you, it was a little weird to be on the other side, not hosting and just, enjoying the.
I learned a lot about you.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully positive things that you're not going to use against me in embarrassing moments.
Absolutely. It was good. Yeah, it was a good experience.
And you got to hear Lulu snore too. Lulu was snoring in a little bit. So yeah, we've got session speakers, workshops, and actually, if you go to the workshops, so there's different ways that you can get registered with Spring, trained with Spring, steel toe. There's a lot of great stuff, but at the bottom we also have there's a social justice and tech workshops. So kind of what's my role from the social collective or the justice collective in applying a racial equity lens to working with data and digital access. So those I'm also really excited about. So anyway, go to spring1.io, register, check out all the incredible stuff. Next week, Spring 1 Tour is happening. Data processing with Spring. Our good friend Michael Manello will be joining us. He's another Spring 1 Tour alumnus that we see out on the road generally. And so he has decided to grace us with his data processing with Spring. And then I believe he's actually going to bring in somebody else on the Wednesday Q&A. So there's going to be a couple. So that's a surprise guest. I can't name names yet because I don't know if we've locked him in, but it'll be exciting Q&A for the next day. That rhymes, by the way. Exciting Q&A for the next day. VMworld coming up September 29th through October 1st. Our very own Paul Golievsky will be presenting at that. Go to vmworld.com, register there. Again, all these are free. All these are we just want knowledge to get out there to let people know that there's better ways to do all this enterprise work, whether it's on the infrastructure side or all the way up to developing. And of course, like the buzzword bingo of the last couple of years, Kubernetes. Kates, as people say. And if you're really a stalker and you want to find out more about me or just see more stuff I'm doing, I'm going to be doing a little couple minute pitch at the NADOG TOLA.
The what?
I believe it's the North American DevOps. I don't know what the G stands for. And then there's the group. Yeah, sure. That sounds right. TOLA, which I'm assuming is, I believe it's out of the southern region. They're kind of doing regions. Oh, maybe that's a last name. I don't know.
It makes me think of Tola, where the girl asked the guy did the dance.
What Sadie Hawkins? Is Sadie Hawkins also that?
Same thing.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to be on that tomorrow, and then the next day on Thursday I'll be doing the Canadian one. Oh, I'm Canadian, gonna use my Canadian accent. That's why I've been practicing. Sorry, Paul. But I will also be doing hash browns fail. We did it. All silliness is done. So lots of stuff happening in our worlds. It's exciting.
And speaking of Spring 1, I think both DaShaun and Tiffany are speaking at it, right?
Oh.
Yep. And
yeah.
The three of us.
A little preview of what we're doing?
Sure, I'll talk first. Basically, like we'll be talking about like using Tanzu, so things like Tanzu Mission Control and Tanzu Observability, paired with things in the open source side, such as like Harbor, Valero, to basically like make your Kubernetes like run things in production and how to do it like easier, better, and to make things more secure, safer, etc.
Ooh,
Very cool.
that et cetera is very intriguing.
Etc.
I'd like to know more.
Have to wait.
And I know, DaShaun, you can wait till the end because you had said that you were going to give yourself a shout out, but you can beginning and end shout out your talk, which is great. So whatever you would like.
I will also be speaking at Spring One. I think that it's like a beginner track, and today I'm also trying to kind of keep it at that 100 level. Sometimes it's hard, in this ecosystem to remember not everybody has the same understanding and depth of knowledge. So I'm going to try to, level set at that, starting at that 100 level.
Excellent. Well, I will most likely be your host because I believe I'm doing the beginner friendly spring emceeing track. So
I'm yes,
Bob and DaShaun
more
time.
excited.
Yes.
Yeah. This will be good times.
Cool. Well, I think we should go. Anybody else have anything else they need to share?
Nope.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. My coworkers are like slamming doors and it's all happening, so I might have to go request some quiet on the set. But without any further ado, DaShaun Carter, let's talk some factor, 15 factor.
Let's do that. So I'm gonna share. I hope that you can see my screen.
Yep, you're good.
Coming in 5 by 5.
Wonderful. This is me. I'm going to talk about 15 factors, and I'm going to overlay a little bit with Kubernetes. This is my 778th day as a platform architect with VMware by way of Pivotal, certified Kubernetes app developer. And you can find me at DaShaun on Twitter, GitHub, and GitLab. I recently had somebody offer me $500 for my @DaShaun on Twitter. Fun fact. The purpose of the session is I want to upgrade the audience from 12 factors to 15 factors. And it's not about the number so much, it's about the order more. And I'm going to approach it from the dev side of DevOps, but I am going to try to keep things at like a 100 level of depth. But I'm going to start with 12 factors. This is where I'm trying to move the audience from for a long time. And even for some people today, 12 factors was or is synonymous with cloud native. I remember the hallway talks with my friend Bobby. And he said, and he was talking about this 12 factor. And all I could do was nod because he was, kind of going down the list. And I was like, yeah, that all sounds amazing. We're not doing any of that. And I immediately went home and I remember jumping onto Heroku, which is where this kind of came from in 2012. I still remember the pushing to Heroku from Git. That feeling was exciting. These are the 12 original factors. We're going to cover them all a little bit later, a little bit different order. But yeah, it's a website, 12factor.net, that you can go and check out. And it's done a lot of good things. The goals was really kind of Heroku made a thing, and they needed to help their customers understand that thing and how to get the best experience from their software development lifecycle using that platform. What are the things that their customers needed to do to have that best experience? I mentioned the software development lifecycle. This is a representation It should resonate a little bit with anybody that's doing software today. But yeah, there are many like it, but this one is mine. Software development lifecycle. On 12factor.net, which came out in 2012, they were talking about platforms. This is in there, on the website still today. They talk about apps that are suitable for deployment on modern cloud platforms in 2012. This is something I'm not going to cover, but it resonates, and I see that word again, for tech to be real, like in order to move forward, we had to have these flexible, independent platforms. Maybe if you've seen or heard of Kubernetes, maybe you have heard of this person. He knows quite a bit about Kubernetes, and he learned it the hard way, but he's somebody that knows a lot about Kubernetes. This is just from Kubernetes website. Just kind of get a lay of the land. It's just a open source system. It was developed at Google for automating deployments, scaling and managing containerized applications. It had a lot of influence from 12 factors, came after 12 factors, after Heroku. Kind is a tool for running Kubernetes, basically making Docker the IaaS that we run Kubernetes on. IaaS being the infrastructure as a service. And somewhere along the way, I heard that Kind stands for Kubernetes in Docker. I haven't found that documented anywhere, but that kind of stuck, and it makes sense to me. But I'm starting from zero. Again, this is kind of a 100 level. I'm going to flip over and just do a quick demo. Not really demo. I'm not typing this. I'm using a script that goes out and does things. It's called Demo Magic. Don't tell anybody. I'm not typing. And what I'm doing is I'm just setting up a Kubernetes cluster. That kind of first step, which seems to be getting easier and easier all the time. And I'm doing it on purpose because I want the audience to think about everything as code. The ability to pipeline and automate everything from the start. We have that level of abstraction today. Thinking about everything as code. I created an empty cluster. I switched context, so now I'm using this cluster, and I showed that there's no pods running. And I have the little clock here kind of showing it, hey, it's not just text on the screen. I'm actually running these commands, but we'll come back to it. So Kevin Hoffman in 2016 realized we're kind of missing some things, and maybe the message needs to be adjusted as technology advanced. And he wrote a book, and here's all the stats. And yeah, it covers the original 12, but it also covers the deltas, like the changes that he made and where he saw gaps. And he also had experience from the field, and he brings that all into the book. But 15 factor, it's just one way of looking at things. It's one that I like. I choose to lean into the 15 factors instead of the 12 factors. But everybody's heard of 8-minute apps, right? So there's other options. There's 19 factors. There's a 3-factor app that you can go and find. I'll share those notes, those links afterwards. But again, it's just one way of looking at things. So these are the 15 factors. Many of them are the same, but the order has changed based on the priority. It's basically like this is how you should think of things in this order to get to the end state, the goal. Platforms have evolved. It's just guidelines, and it can be kind of a contract. If the audience is taking these things into consideration, hopefully at the end of today's session, they will see that they can develop an app that can play on Kubernetes, and Kubernetes has matured enough to where a lot of the concern that you or I had 4 or 5 years ago is gone. But again, I'm going to remind, this is software development lifecycle. This is kind of what we're thinking about. It's not just the app that's 15 factor. It's not the platform that's 15 factor. 15 factor is kind of the guidelines for all the bits, all of the things. One code base, one application. This is factor number one. But a code base does not equal a repository. I hope most people are comfortable with version control. Things like Git is one that's fairly popular. If not, I encourage anybody to stop here, don't watch any more, and go and learn about Git and the value that it provides. I like to think of things in a big A, little a concept. Big A application, meaning that bounded context, those the composition of little a apps that make a product or a solution or code base, that shared domain, versus the little a repositories that might compose that big A app. If you have been a fan like you watched Ryan Baxter talk about Spring on Kubernetes. I'm going to kind of leverage some of what he did again in these scripts just to revisit. You can go and watch it. He goes much deeper than I'm going to go, but I'm going to go fast. You can watch his episode later. And now I'm going to kind of like, this is the real thing. We're live. So I'm going to jump out and hopefully this works because I'm relying on outside services to show, hey, I have this repository that I created before. It's empty. That is part of what we're doing. The cluster didn't exist. The repository didn't exist. There's no pre-existing code, but you're watching it live. Here's the URL. Feel free to join and follow along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and do the same steps that Ryan did. And again, this is on purpose. The tool that I'm using is called Demo Magic, but I hope in the days, today of CI and CD, that it's not a big jump to imagine what's happening on the demo screen happening in some CI CD system. We cloned an empty repository. I did the same commands that Ryan was doing. I curled start.spring.io and I made my first commit. I did this on purpose. I wanted to say, I want to show these small incremental changes. This is what we pulled. The next step that Ryan did was he made some changes and added a REST controller. He already had kind of the idea of what his app was going to do. It was going to be a hello world service. What I did was, for my demo purpose was I just wrote out that file into a separate file for ease. But again, I'm adding it to my Git repository. This is a step that Ryan didn't do, but I'd like to introduce. I'm using a tool called SDKman. And what that tool does is it allows me to pick and choose tools to install. And I'm hoping that you could see the value in having a tool like this available in your CI/CD pipelines. What I'm doing here is I initialized the content or the context, and I added a file that defined the value. What JDK am I using to build this application? So now that is part of my repository, and it's not necessarily a configuration. In the POM, we have the Java version of 11, but that's a delta, right? Not all version 11s are the same. So this is just a more granular definition of which JDK that I'm using. And again, as soon as I make that file, I'm adding it to my Git repository and making a commit, trying to show that this is part of that small changes, incremental changes going forward. The next step is I'm just running things in the background. I'm building the package, and then I'm going to start up the background, or I'm going to start up the app in the background. Again, similar to what Ryan was doing. Except I'm starting it, it's in the same process. It's in the same terminal. I started it in the background so I could go ahead and run my unit tests. So now it's running in the background, and I can run those tests. I'm just hitting the endpoint. Do I see hello world? Yes, I do. So not fully automated tests, but you kind of get the point is I've built my app, I've tested it, I've validated, hey, the actuator's coming up, hello world comes up. This is good. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And at that point, I'm going to push the code. I built the thing. I tested a thing, validated it. My commit's done. That's the experience that I want as a developer. I don't want to have to worry beyond that. Hey, I checked the box, that feature. It says hello world is done. I validate it and go. Put it onto the supply chain, whatever happens after that, whatever automation comes after that. Set it and forget it and move on. API first. The idea is that before you start working, what are you trying to do? What is the hypothesis? What's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? For me, Ryan provided the contract. He provided make it say, hello world, give me some metrics, give me an actuator endpoint. And that was my API first. It was already done. One of the other cool things about API first and why it's early in the 15 factors is it takes away some bottlenecks. The idea that, hey, we've built this API, we've come to an agreement, we can stop doing this. I'm going to share some scar tissue. There was a time when QA, in my world, they didn't write tests until after the code was finished. They didn't know what they were testing. Oh, okay, as soon as you're done, then we'll test it and we'll figure out, not having any idea what is actually done and complete and in that artifact or artifacts. That's when they're going to write the tests. So you can imagine how much longer things took to get to production. So API first, it's great for QA as well. Once we have that contract, QA can go and start to write their tests, prepare their tests at the same time that the service providers are writing their tests. They're writing their code, they're implementing that API. And the other consumers inside or outside the organization, they can start to prepare to write against that API before it's complete. But again, Olga delivered a great session on Spring Cloud Contract. And I look at this as an implementation of API first. It's contract-driven development. There's the link. I would love for you to go and watch that. It is a great tool, and it helps drive that API first concept. Number 3 is dependency management. Apps need to bring their dependencies with them, bring everything with them. Again, I have scar tissue. Containers sounded like such a good idea. Like, oh, can I just put my code in this container and then you take it? But then there's the managing of those containers and who wanted to do that and who's going to own that in 2014, 2015. Some of the other things that I can think about when I think about a container are that least privilege principle. Your code doesn't have to rely on any dependencies on that deployment target. If I've got everything contained in my container, I don't have to assume anything. And more scar tissue. Throwing code over, hey, my thing is done, giving it to somebody else, and having no visibility into where it was. Oh, I didn't know that the data center was being rebuilt this weekend. Oh, I didn't know that Tomcat moved to a new location. Oh, and I'm supposed to rewrite the deployment script, not knowing where those files are. Got it. System file permissions were changed. Like, how are we supposed to know that? These are problems, again, scar tissues that I have. And this idea of containers, it felt so right at the time. And in Kevin's book, this is where he mentions build packs. Build packs. At the time, Heroku and Cloud Foundry were doing this build pack thing. What he didn't know then is today, Heroku and Cloud Foundry have joined forces. And now we have cloud native build packs, which you're going to learn about on August 25th with Emily. I'm seriously doing commercials. And while I'm doing that, check out my cloud native build pack for COBOL on GitHub.
I love it. This is great. Thank you for the future show shout outs.
Hey, like, again, I'm trying to keep it 101, but for that 201 level, if you want to, tell me more about build packs. Tell me more about Spring on Kubernetes. I'm just trying to share. I want to keep it like, hey, let's level set. What are we doing? And I want to use 15 factors as that tool, that frame. So in the app that we built, any app that you build at start.spring.io, you get some dependency management. You can choose Maven or Gradle, but the dependency matrix, so it's not just which dependencies need to be vendored for my app, but because we're using Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, that dependency matrix, those dependencies that my app is using, they are being managed. They are being handled by those release trains from the Spring team. And it's another level of solid things that I don't have to worry about as a developer for that good developer experience. So now this is where we scoot over and it's an example. Another cool thing that we can do is we can actually build an image. So with Docker, with the latest Spring Boot, we can actually build an image. Again, similar to what Ryan did. I'm just showing this as an example of building an image. So this local image, you can see here, it doesn't exist on that registry. Right now, it is building this image and it's going to push it out to the registry. And this is going to be available for everybody watching. So, and I forgot to jump back. I showed you the empty repository, but remember, we did a push. So the code that I pulled down from start.spring.io is now live. Anybody watching can go and check out this repository. They can do the same build. They can build their own Docker. They can make their own changes. They can go and they are working with us at the same time. But we've only been doing this for 20 minutes. We have a Kubernetes cluster. We've got a repository of a Spring Boot app. And it's out there running. And now, shortly, we just pushed this registry, this container, and somewhere here, I should see my container. And now this is a big deal. When I think back 5 years ago, those apps that I was kind of thrown over the wall, we had the concept of one app per VM, but that VM had a Tomcat somewhere and some file permissions somewhere and some certificates somewhere, and something had to be gluing those things together. And today, with what we've just done, again, it's just a Hello World app, but I delivered the runtime, the Tomcat, where that container is going to run. I delivered everything in 107 megabytes to a registry that anybody watching can now go down and pull and run on their local system. They can run the same commands. And that is steps towards that 15 factor. That's the big difference between today, 2020, and say 2015, is we have come this far where things are that easy. And again, I'm using a script. This is all pipelined on purpose to kind of demonstrate that life cycle. We've been running tests. We've been verifying. Yeah, it still works. I can still run it and hit the actuator endpoint. We're verifying those things along the way, but it's in different forms. We have our artifact that we might build. I didn't build it and I didn't put the jar anywhere, but I built it and ran tests against it. But then I built that Docker container, and it has all the dependencies it needs to run the Hello World app.
You're talking about 2015, and I see that you pushed that up 40 years ago.
Yeah. I know I've seen that.
Time.
I know I've seen that explained, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head. They made a comment on that earlier too. But still, did you pull it down? You should try while we're doing it. You have the source code here. Take it for a spin. It's that easy. I digress. We're going to move on. The nice thing about this 15 factors, the other nice thing for me, is that we're covering the most important things first. Some might disagree. Some might have different order depending on which org you're in. One of the things that I like to keep in mind is we're all just kind of one piece in the pie. Mark Fine's quote, we're all just one piece of the pie of getting things to production. So yeah, the priority might change. Maybe my focus is more around the build side. Maybe my focus is more around security. So the order might change for some, but it's a good order to at least start from. I'm a fan. Design, build, release, and run. Small features. You can go and look at the Git repository. I tried to demonstrate commits don't have to be big deals. You don't have to close a ticket with a commit. Small changes that are easier to test, easier to roll back or roll forward. That's part of, this motion, this 15-factor world. We also already covered this. Converting that code that we're working on, that feature code, into a versioned binary artifact, whether it's a jar, a TGZ, a Docker image, the automation that I'm running, my little scripts, should be enough to do something like this. We have a Docker image in a public repository that could be secured, that could be on-prem just as easy. The CI does not need to be overly complex to be effective. The tools that are available all have overlaps, but those overlaps are starting to show these tools. You don't need 15 tools to get things to your Docker registry these days. It might be 1 or 2. Part of the build process, part of that factor is keeping those things separate, making sure that CI is separate from CD. But part of what we expect, I think, today, I think we expect it from our OSS. I think we expect it from our commercial software, is that we want to know what changed. Who made those changes? I think any enterprise wants to know who made that change that went out and shouldn't have. What version was running on Sunday at 1 o'clock? What was the delta from the previous version? That can help across the board. But releases should be unique. identifiable, and there should be an audit trail. I should be able to say what was running in production at 3:41 p.m. last January. Coworkers. Being 15 factors, it helps kind of the big picture. Again, I've demonstrated, and I'm just wanting to like point out that I developed this locally. Like all this was running on my Mac. The platform provides some of those extra abilities. One of the recent topics of conversation with my good friend Tim was, I have Docker containers. I understand Docker Compose. Like what's the value? What am I missing? And I think the 15 factors story kind of points some of those things out. Fault tolerance is one. Scalability is something that you get. But monitoring and health, and again, I'm gonna refer back to Ryan's example where he added the readiness and liveness probes. I'm not going to do that part. But yeah, we can create, actually I'll do this. Moving on. I'm running that registry, just validating, hey, we're good. I needed to stop here. I needed to stop here because if I grab that container and I start it up, it might not be ready if my test ran immediately after. So I had to put a pause in there. But now I can make sure it's running and it's up and my tests are passing. But again, Ryan kind of already addressed that. Kubernetes has that built in. There's ways of doing it with Docker. There's ways of making things work, but it's extra. And we kind of get that out of the box today with Kubernetes. But right now, I just generated, or I validated that was running, that image that I pulled down. And now I'm going to generate Kubernetes YAML, just like Ryan did. And I'm going to store it in my repository. This is something that is not recommended by Kevin in the 15 factors. So in this case, do as I say, not as I do. But I'm just trying to show the audience has everything that they need to run this application on their own Kubernetes cluster. And this is where we run into the stick. We're supposed to treat configuration and credentials in code as volatile substances that explode when they're combined. I love that metaphor. Keep them separated. One way of doing that is think of your apps as open source. It's just, hey, what happens if everybody gets to go and see this, this repository? That is a step along with the documentation piece that has changed my outlook. Yeah, I think for the better. Having that kind of open source DNA, yeah, it has value. One of the things that he suggests is a brute force method. If you're trying to move in this 15-factor direction, just remove all the config from your application and then externalize those configs until things are fixed. I'm going to skip that. What I was doing there was adding configurations for the external readiness and liveness probes. Moving on, 6 is logs. Logs should be treated as event streams. The idea is, I don't want to worry about where to put certain logs. There was a time not too long ago where user logs were in one file, app system logs were in another file. And I think today, part of what we're seeing is that a truly cloud native app doesn't care, right? I have standard out, standard error. The platform should route those streams. And every platform is different. Every platform is going to handle them in different ways. But the idea from a developer standpoint, maybe a developer using Kubernetes, is I don't want to concern myself with that. To this point, we have an application that we can run on Kubernetes. We haven't thought about logs. We've seen the logs come through the standard out, standard error. I made it quiet even. I would do the same in my pipelines. I don't want to fill my pipelines with a bunch of unnecessary logs. I want to see success or fail. But again, every platform is different. And now I'm going to say when I think platform, when I say platform, I'm thinking of the full lifecycle, that full software development lifecycle, the big picture. It goes beyond just the app and just Kubernetes. It's all of the things that Tiffany's going to talk about. All of the things that make Kubernetes better. Make it a platform. Referring back to Kelsey's quote, Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. Disposability. There was a time where we could just assume, hey, my app's going to be out there and it's going to run. And not too long ago, those apps, nobody would have thought that those apps would get 10 million hits, in a day or an hour in some cases. That wasn't fathomable. Now we know that those things are going to fall over at scale, and sometimes even not at scale. Things just happen. There was a time where it's like, it was cheaper to just go out and pull out that pizza box from the data center, throw the whole thing away and put another pizza box in. It was cheaper for some companies to do that than to fix the actual problem. But today, scaling up and scaling down in seconds is important. Money is typically on the line. It used to be minutes to get something to a steady state, and that's just not acceptable anymore. 8 is backing services. Any service that the application relies on for its functionality. And this is a tricky one too. There's a lot to unpack here. Anything that my service is connecting to, data storage, messaging, caching, security, or even lines of business. I have to check to see if somebody's on the no-fly list. Some other service provided by some other government might be a part of authorizing a ticket purchase for somebody in some system. I like to say this. I think I need this on a t-shirt. In the cloud, there's no file system. This is usually the first and the last hurdle I see for teams that are moving towards this cloud native 15 factors. Kubernetes provides different ways of doing things other than mounting to C:/opt my files or something like that. But again, this is usually the first and the last hurdle that I see as teams are moving towards this cloud native. But there's some small print. The application gets to declare it, but the platform actually handles the binding. And what that says to me, these words say to me, the applications need to be resilient enough to wait for the platform to connect the dots. So it's not just the platform responsibility. Applications need to be at a certain level. To have that good platform experience, your application should be able to wait for those backing services to be bound. The binding of an application, it should be done via external configs. Again, we took all the configs out, hopefully. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't look at the repo. But this is that same concept of making it easy to move from QA to dev, from dev to prod, whichever external configs. It should also be possible to attach and detach backing services. This is another thing that is hard for a lot of platforms. Being able to change that backing service without redeploying the application. Concepts like having a a schema change, canary schema change. Hey, I want to take these instances and bind them to this new schema or new service without affecting the rest of the environment, without requiring a restart. These are things that we definitely couldn't do just a few years ago. Environment parity. It works on my machine, and I say that, and I'm trying to think of the last time that I actually heard somebody use that excuse. And as I read this, every time I read this, I wonder how much longer are we going to be able to make that reference? There's going to be a generation where that's not a concept. That's not even an issue. But again, we, in our little quick demo here, we built a cluster from scratch, from a script. The infra, what it was running on, was completely abstracted. Anybody can go and pull down the Kubernetes YAML that's now deployed to GitLab, and they can run this application. Another hat tip to Paul, more cloud. This is what we talk about. Resources. Environment parity is not just the infra. It's all the things. It's are the same people involved in the process. Did we give the same amount of time for like a soak or a chaos test or a performance test? All the things are a part of this parity, and you have to have that. And I'm, again, trying to demonstrate that. The repository that we just built that defines the CAS, abstracts the IaaS away. We pulled source. We ran some tests. We have that already. We don't need a bunch of stuff to do that app. Every commit should be a candidate for deployment. So we're kind of now at the back end, we're getting the finer grained details of what we can do today easily with Spring, with Kubernetes, but others as well. Admin processes. The concept is the one-off tasks, things that aren't going to be done regularly or consistently, like a database migration. I have a hard time in this space, not around these types of jobs, but around like the batch job. My spidey sense tingles when I hear batch because I always think stream. I always think, oh, there's probably a better way of making those adjustments. And I have a feeling that we're going to hear some of that at Spring 1 soon. But these admin processes, part of being 15-factor is taking these things into consideration and treating them as such, making it so they are executed once in a separate system. They're not a part of a pipeline with a release train. They are separate processes that can be ran ad hoc. Port binding. These are just some of the problems that we had early on. Avoiding container determined ports, micromanaging port assignments. Like, oh, yeah, HTTP is always going to be on this port and DNS is always going to be on that port, et cetera, et cetera. This is a concept of port binding. Leave it up to the platform. Treat applications as backing services. The share nothing pattern. Stateless processes. The idea, one of the big problems that we've seen, that I've seen, is like, hey, I'm used to having a session. Session's good, right? I always think of a conversation that I have with Rob Wench on how to do security. It depends, right? There are cases where maybe a JOT token is not just easier, but it's also more secure. There are also cases where session is the right answer, the more secure, the easier path forward. But sometimes we take a problem like sharing session, sharing cache, and we make the problem worse by doing that in a distributed system. This is another hard space to be in. Hopefully, if we're doing factors 1 through 11, we're not running into this as often. Scaling out using the process model. We just want to make sure that as we scale, as we see growth or issues, we want to be able to horizontally scale and not vertically scale. And how do we see those issues? This is one of the special to me topics. This factor is telemetry. In 2020, I think it's very easy for you or I to have clusters across clouds or data centers, or even in my house. I have a cluster on this laptop. My son's got a cluster on that top. I have a cluster of Raspberry Pis right there. The idea that how do I know when something falls over, when something explodes or powers off? The idea of telemetry, sending a signal home. And Kevin's example is treating it like a scientific instrument in space. This is a topic that I am going to be speaking on at Spring One. These are some of the things that we take into consideration with telemetry. I like to think of the metrics first. As soon as my Hello World app is done, one of the things that I will talk about is saying, hey, what is the hypothesis? What do I expect this Hello World app to do in production? What are the outcomes? What are the things that I want to measure to determine if I want to keep it up? Was the investment worth it? Was the ROI worth the investment? So yeah, come see me at Spring One. The last one is security. And security is something that wasn't talked about in the original 12 factors. But like I said, it's the last of the 15 factors. But I think depending on the audience, it might be the first. And that's all I have.
Sorry, I'm trying to push applause button and on my new stuff over here. So yes. So I hope the applause button worked for the people out there. That's where I'm at, right?
My mom is blowing up my phone. She loved it.
She's like,
so I'm good.
Well, great.
Mom and Dad, I think they're deploying Kubernetes right now.
They better. With all the Raspberry Pis, you keep buying them for every. They're like, is this why you keep buying us all these Raspberry Pis?
I give them away. I volunteer. It's been a while, but code.org. Every once in a while, you get a call from a teacher saying, "Hey, we have a program we want, learn." Yeah. And I always bring Raspberry Pis.
Great.
Always.
Great.
Give them away. They're awesome. My kids.
And when the people don't realize that it's not an actual pie they can eat, they're like, wait, I don't.
What is this stick?
As Cartman would say, I was led to believe there'd be punch and pie. Yeah, there you go. Eat the rich. Nice. So great. Well, do you know when you're talking? I know you said come see me, but I didn't see if you put like
I don't think I know when I'm talking yet.
You know when your breakout session is? Okay. Yeah, I've got actually the page up, but it would probably take a few minutes to go through that. So we're not going to do that. But yes.
I don't see it either way. I just looked.
You what? You don't see it either way?
Yeah.
Well, we know you're going to be there. It's going to be awesome. Again, reminder, everyone go to spring1.io and register. Lots of great information will be coming at you in the next coming weeks to, be able to lock in your schedule for what you're watching, as well as, if you sign up for any workshops, getting all that stuff, because those are, I believe, limited. So you're going to certainly want to register for those as quickly as possible, or when they open up for registration. So yeah, well, this was great. And I know your coworkers, I could hear one faintly in the background. I know they're scrambling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are a a basketball team upstairs.
Well, that's wonderful. It's great to have a joyous house of coworkers. Mine are all sleeping right now. It's incredible.
That's amazing.
I know. So I'm going to ride this wave as long as I can.
But I never get more than one to sleep at the same time.
Yeah, we've been holding on to the 5-year-old. She's like definitely ready to not take naps anymore, but we still, because we have a younger one, we're just like, no, everybody does it. Yeah. And so anyway. Yep. And I was actually thinking that at one point in time did I start realizing how amazing naps were? And I feel like it's something in high school, but I don't remember. So anyway, naps, everybody, they do the body good. Next week is, I believe next week is a TBD. We haven't a spot that opened up. And so I'm in the process of locking in our next week's person, but we will definitely have somebody, and we're excited to have that person, whomever it may be. And then the week after that, as you so wonderfully broadcast, Emily Casey will be on, and she will be great. And then the week after that, which is like the Tuesday right before Spring One, Paul and Tiffany and I are going to go through our Spring One talk stuff with you. So that'll be great. We're really excited. There's going to be a nice little month coming up. So many great things to view. And of course, anything that you might have missed in the past, because, as DaShaun has been an avid, viewer of this show and others. Yeah,
I am a fan. I wanted to start off by saying, hey, long-time caller or whatever.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I can't believe I'm here.
It's great. And we're so happy to have you. And we're actually locking in Brian McLean for the week after Spring One, another long-time listener, first-time caller. So it's nice to start getting some more people from the other side. And
it's definitely one of my favorite hours or more of the week. It's something that I look forward to. You guys are great. It was my pleasure. It was an honor to kind of come and share. I hope somebody got something out of it, because this is definitely a great platform, and I think that it's actually like picking up. I'm starting to hear more, me out in the field. I'm starting to hear a little bit more of like people are starting to join in. So yeah, it feels good.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, we're definitely.
I was joining before it was cool.
Yeah, you were. You're OG. You're OT, original Tanzu. It's
we need like a handshake.
Yeah, we'll work on. I'll work on it, and we'll figure it out. But it's if you want to rewatch this or any of our other stuff, go to Twitter, Tanzu.tv. We've got all of our content up there. So, Tiffany, Paul, any closing remarks?
Yeah, no,
nothing
I think,
that you didn't cover.
Brian McLean says nice stuff in chat, and Riskiest Muffin, who I assume is maybe your mum, Sean,
could be,
says nice work. So thanks, Mum.
Yep. Yeah, this was great. Thank you, DaShaun. I really appreciate it. Great to see you. Miss seeing you on the road. Aww. as you're a fellow Spring One Tour, partaker, and so really miss you. And it's just good to see all of you virtually. And have a great day.
Thanks.
Oh, love you, DaShaun. Ooh, riskiest muffin. Ooh.
Mom.
So, come on, Mom. I was embarrassing you. All right, so now I have to figure out how to end all of this. So camera 1 and camera 2, I say goodnight to you and talk to you all soon.